friends. Welcome to episode 202. Oh my god, I almost said 100.
You almost
202 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I am Sarah.
I'm Rob.
How we doing, Rob?
You know, I'm weird. Like, tonight just feels different. Like, not bad or good, just different. I've been working on a project for us, like I was just telling you, where I'm actually getting all of the shows converted so we can drop them onto YouTube. So we just have an archive, first off, and two, we have another place to put the stuff.
Yeah, right on.
And see if we can get some more listeners. And I'm constantly through the edit process listening to the end of every show. And it's interesting going back, like, hearing the little changes, the tiny adjustments when we've been sick, what the sound differences like.
Yep.
It is different. It is interesting and kind of funny, and at times it's like, oh my gosh, that's what we sounded like.
202 shows, you get to know, you know.
Oh god, yeah. So hopefully that will be not too much longer, but it's a work effort going back through all the shows.
You know what? It just kind of like occurred to me as I was reading the intro too. Is like we wrote this intro for episode 1. Like
we did.
We haven't changed a damn thing about this thing in 202 episodes.
It works.
It does, yeah.
I mean, everybody knows what to expect coming into it. I think if we changed it to like some, Fox Sport News intro kind of thing, it would just sound weird. Or if we did like the, hey, everybody, and does like...
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm never going to do that. We'll never do that. That's
Ring
not
the bell notification icon.
I hate all of that stuff. Oh my gosh.
No. Not going to happen.
So we haven't had... Oh, I had my game.
You had your game.
I had my game.
You had your
which
game.
was different. By far. Telling at that. So you and one of the other players had a mini kind of encounter that we had to do for a wrap up because the original fight the original incursion to go rescue did not went as planned, but at the very end of it there was the hollow moment that your character did not get to go kick the butt of the bad guy that you wanted.
Yeah, my character is a character who understands the usage of power. Understands that if you're not the lead dog, the view never changes. And that man touched my family.
Yeah.
So he had to be taught that was he and everyone around him had to be taught that was not an option.
Yeah.
That they were under my protection, and so there was a frosty quest for vengeance.
Which did come to a very frosty close.
Which came to a very, very frosty close, and then I went home. And,
so we picked up after you guys had returned and explained what had happened, or didn't go into detail explaining, but did explain what happened. And then we did some, effectively, like Savage World interludes, where you guys went through a couple different experiences. Some people... talked with other parts of the group, or
very good RP moments, for a lot of us.
Yeah, it was nice to have, and then I kind of proposed something to the group, because for me I was in one of those kind of flux moments where it was like, okay, if we're gonna carry this through as D&D, I am going to have to create battle encounters to the end that are meaningful, that have connection points, and make it feel like you guys aren't just hand waving to the final boss.
Well, let me sum this up from the player standpoint. You said to us, who wants to do this whole climactic multiple battle,
as D&D
thing as D&D, and the entire group went, oh God, no.
Yep. And so then I just proposed to you guys, I'm like, okay, do you want to have a gritty fight to the end in a different way where it feels like you guys are working your way for it and it's a well-fought finish? Or do you guys kind of want to do something a bit more heroic? And everybody kind of had that same feel of they would rather have heroism, but I loved one of the players... the final player's answer. And it was because it summed up everything. It was just as simple as what I'm hearing is we've basically, we could either do it as the end of Infinity War or the end of Endgame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas in one, it's like, hey, we have this big fight and people are dying.
But what cause?
But you didn't win. That was the thing.
Yeah.
The snap still happens. It was like, oh, kind of a thing. And then the Endgame one is everybody comes in and like freaking Captain America and Thor using hammers and kicking butt and kicking faces. And
portals are opening and all the heroes are showing
Exactly.
up. Heroes we forgot about from 7 movies ago are showing up.
Yeah. There's an all-girl kick butt team happening.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what we want. And everyone's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And funny enough, I immediately then said, okay, we're going to finish this game with Blades in the Dark, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And we started immediately making alternative characters in Blades in the Dark instantaneously, which was hilarious to me at the same time, but I think it's just going to be better for a finish. Because it's going to allow me to do a lot less work on my end to get the same ending.
Yeah, agreed.
Or I shouldn't say to get the same ending, to allow for a fiction ending that makes sense.
Yeah.
That still has variable, that still has concerns and fun, but it allows you guys to narrate the consequences and move through it.
And I think it's good. I mean, I think obviously, we like to fill everybody in on how our own games are going, because it's topical. But if there's a takeaway for our listeners, especially our newer storytellers, it's that have these conversations with your group, about the story.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guys feel this should end? Are you going to feel cheapened or bad about having it a real gritty, we won but at what cost sort of thing? Or do you want the big hero ending? Or what should I be aiming for to make this a good story outcome from everybody without handing it to you and telling you, how it's going to go?
Giving you the description of the end.
Right.
Nobody wants that. Nobody wants that.
But that's a perfectly valid conversation to have, and I think we're all better for it, because that way nobody's going to be like, I hated your ending.
Yeah. And I almost expect that, the next session or two will be it.
Yeah.
Which it's easy to see now, because I don't have to worry about 2.5 hours of combat rolls.
You don't, yeah.
Yeah, and remembering what skill salvage is left out of the depreciated skill sets as people tear down through their stuff, of me throwing Thrawn and more Thrawn at you until eventually you're getting to the point of fighting boss with rocks and twigs.
Yeah. Actually, Knox in the Box in the live chat says, what does closure look like to you?
Yeah,
it's a very good question. I think that's...
No, I think that's heckin' valid.
No, I'll tell you one thing. I don't think I said this during the last session, but I will tell you right now, because it is in the room present with us. That miniature of that dragon has to make an appearance. I know we're not doing a tactical fight for it anymore.
It will come out. It will come out.
But y'all need to see that one.
Yeah, no,
okay.
it will be coming out. The dragon will be coming out, and the other one will be coming out as well. Both will be coming out. They're important to me. I think it's a good finish, and it will definitely be out on the table.
Good.
Definitely. So
Good.
When those scenes come up, they will be there.
Hold on, I'm going to give a little treat to the people in the live chat.
A little treat?
A little treat for the people in the live chat here.
Okay.
Just continue.
All right.
Walk in our show tonight.
So, when we first started coming up with a concept for we do our shows, we do a lot of sit down and drag through questions as we try and figure out hey, what do we want to do this year? And some things hit the list in weird ways, and some things hit the list, and Sarah looks at me and goes, is that a show? And then we start talking for more than 10 minutes, and we go, okay, that's a show. That counts as a show. And so when this topic came up, which was talking about basically progression and advancement in games, the mechanical side of it, the idea was that, this is something that we can discuss, but, what are we really going to be talking about? And there are a decent amount of systems with different curves and advancement ideas. But the truth of the matter is that it really is different. They're more different than just I'm one system and I'm another system.
Yeah.
And just because of that, it opens a lot of doors, and it actually turned it into 2 shows for us. And we have a break in between, just because of timing. But this show, we're going to kind of focus more from the player's angle and what that advancement looks like and what it means. And our next show that we're going to be talking about is going to be talking more from the story side and how that is affected on that end and what it really means to grow in level.
Right.
So expect this show to be kind of more mechanical player side view.
Yeah.
Sarah's going to try and keep me from talking about the other side because I really want to talk about that side of it.
But that is a discussion for 2 weeks.
So let's define this like we like to do. What is a power curve?
We're going to be talking about power curves a lot tonight, so we got to define that right away. Okay, so power curve is a description of how quickly the characters grow in power via the advancement system. Okay, so in most games you're going to have experience or some other points or currency or even just flat up advances. you know, where it's just like, okay, you have just advanced. You didn't need to accumulate points to do it. You just do, you know. But one way or another, at certain milestones, your character is going to get stronger. Now, a power curve is essentially how fast that change is going to happen via the advancement system. Okay. Now, we describe power curves in a couple different ways. We describe a power curve as either being steep, wherein like advancement is going to happen very quickly. Characters are going to grow significantly in power in relatively short periods of time. Okay, for example, a good example of a steep power curve actually is Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, one of our flagship systems out there in the market. Characters grow relatively quickly if the guidelines for advancement are followed via the adventuring day. Okay, now keep in mind that most advancement is always going to be based on how stingy or generous the storyteller is with.
Yeah, whether they're giving experience, like, classically, which is, like, as you kill things or as you gain loot, experience would come through instantaneously. So you, like, literally at the end of a fight, you could level, in theory.
Yeah.
And would vary player to player in many ways. Then you have the milestone design, which is as events change, you pop and suddenly come up to a different level, or even versions of the game.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of times the advancement system is via storyteller fiat, basically.
Yes.
But like even the difference between like a 3rd level and a 6th level D&D character can really mean like either struggling with an encounter versus entirely trivializing it.
100%.
Certain new spells, new abilities. You've essentially doubled in hit points from one encounter to the next. From 3rd level to 6th level there. So you've got a very steep power curve because it's so generous with the upgrades to your character. They wanted every level to feel significant, and there's 20 levels.
Yeah, which is a lot of significance. So,
okay, now. Compare that to what we call a flat power curve.
Right.
Okay, and a flat power curve is exact opposite. Advancement happens relatively slowly, or the effects of the advancement have less impact on the overall power of the character. Okay, a great example of this one is Savage Worlds. The impact of advancement is relatively little.
Yes.
Over the span of a long game, your characters will go from man with sword to man who's pretty good with a sword. You're not going to see even from like, because it does kind of have like pseudo levels to it. There's what they call ranks. There's novice. For your first 4 advances, keep you in novice, and then your next 4 advances go into seasoned.
Right.
Veteran, heroic, and then legendary. Every 4 advances.
And you're gated. Some of your power sets are gated through those as well.
Yes, yeah. So there's little things like that to kind of keep the power curve even a little flatter to keep it from just.
And realistically, you're still not godlike.
Yeah, no, you're not. Because the big thing about that is that edges often don't compound on other edges. And so your ability set gets wider rather than deeper. Okay, you're not going to be doing things like, cleave becomes great cleave becomes whirlwind attack. It's going to be more like, okay, I can punch, but now I can also shoot, but now I can also stealth.
Right.
Sort of stuff.
Yep.
And the changes in your skill die isn't going to make a huge impact. It's not going to swing the numbers so drastically.
And I will say this, for alternative games that have high or very steep power curves that don't at first appear that way because they're very different in the way that they handle their powers. One of the key ones that came to mind while we were putting this together was Vampire. Vampire has a very steep, as it doesn't appear that way because there's no levels per se.
Yeah.
But you gain some ridiculous power abilities.
See, I want to bring Vampire up because I think you're right, but I also think you're wrong. I think Vampire is a special case that we'll get. I'm going to bring that up later.
Right, but if you look at it straight for I'm advancing through the dots by which I place on my sheet,
yes,
it is a very high power curve.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
So,
you're absolutely right.
And that's kind of where I'm saying steep in that sense because as I'm doled things out to me, to a degree, so is 7C.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a vertical progression to it,
Right?
And that's kind of where we're going to next in our discussion.
Whereas in the other one, on the flat side of things, if we want to stay within, just to give another example on the flat side, Mouse Guard is a relatively flat game.
Yeah.
And especially because it isn't so much gated upon your ranking advancement, even though there are, certain mouse ability, it doesn't say like you can't do this unless you're a guard mouse kind of a thing. But your placement within that, but more so the fact that you're gated by how you advance that really handles that differently. And each one of these has a different flavor within the story, but really it doesn't change the design of the curve, whether it's steep or flat.
Right.
There are other elements that definitely add into that. And that's where we kind of now step into what does this mean for progression?
Right.
And I see you want to start with vertical, which I think everybody is more aware of by far.
Yeah, I mean, vertical progression is what Dungeons and Dragons has.
Yeah, it's what we predominantly in tabletop know as of today.
Yeah, and also a lot of even computer games have vertical progression to them.
Almost all do.
So vertical progression is probably the advancement system that most gamers know of, even if they're not terribly familiar with D&D already. If they came into it, if they've played a video game in the last 20 years, they know what vertical progression is. So vertical progression looks like this. It's generally classified by a steep power curve. Okay. Increases in power are directly from the last increase, okay? Your line always goes up. Something that was small is going to become larger with every single step towards this advancement, okay? More HP, higher skill numbers, new abilities that are better than the last ones. You might have the standard version of it, but now you either get to use it more, or you get an improved version that does more damage, or affects more foes, or whatever.
Or literally the ability that you had automatically now does more.
Yeah.
Just you don't even have to add anything to it. It just says it's based on your level.
Yeah, I mean, even your cantrips in D&D 5th edition are like, they do 1d8, but now they do 2d8. Welcome to level 5.
Or instead of 2, you now have 3 or 4.
Welcome to level 11. Welcome to level 17. Yep.
Right.
And it's easy to see that a character that is higher on the curve is going to be quote-unquote better or more powerful than a character that's lower on the curve.
Yep.
Okay? You can easily hold a 6th-level character up to a 3rd-level character and tell me which one is numerically better, which one is more powerful.
Yep.
Okay. Compare that to horizontal progression, which is kind of classified by what our flat power curves look like. And I say flatter because I don't think any game system has a truly flat power curve. If you do, you've kind of got zero power curve.
I would agree with that statement. I think there's some arguments to be made there, but I think it has more to do with how that progression happens and the cost of that progression. That there are some games that you could say are near flat.
But I will say that horizontal progression is a type of progression and does not necessarily correlate directly to a flat power curve.
Correct.
Okay, because there are plenty of games, and this is kind of where I wanted to bring Vampire up, that have horizontal progression and a very steep power curve.
100% agree.
Okay, so what we mean when we say a horizontal progression is characters do not directly increase in power like from one step to the other, okay? But they're provided more options. Think of it as having more tools in your toolbox, okay? Your hammer doesn't get better at hammering nails necessarily, but now you also have a screwdriver and a pair of pliers.
Yep.
You are capable of dealing with more situations with specialized tools for those things, so you're quantifiably better off than you were when you just had a hammer. But you're still hammering in nails the exact same way you used to.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Whereas, like, a vertical progression to that would be you've upgraded to a power hammer. You've upgraded to a jackhammer, you know?
Right. You are no longer using the base hammer skill. You just do jackhammer all the time.
Yeah, now you have a sledgehammer with a rocket pack on it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, you used to be able to summon bats. Now you can summon human variant, undead vampires.
They're called vampires, yeah.
Well, there's a name for them, aren't there? Yeah.
There's a name for
those darn runners.
Find them in a cistern.
Nice.
Again, oftentimes systems aren't necessarily one or the other. You're going to see a mix of both out there. And I think, like you said, Vampire is a great example of this.
Yeah.
Because, for those not familiar with Vampire the Masquerade, it is essentially a point-buy system.
Yep.
Okay? Your experience points come to you in essentially tokens.
Yep.
You will get I think it's typically like 3 to 5 experience per game session.
The last time I checked. Yeah, the last time I checked.
Yeah. Again, this is like old versions of it, so I haven't played any of the Chronicles of Darkness stuff. So this may have changed.
May have shifted.
But it works just as well as a hypothetical example one way or another. So you're going to get like 3 to 5 experience points.
Yeah.
Okay, now those points can be cashed in directly for advances to your character. So you may have like 2 dots in stealth. Each dot represents a D10 you will add to your die pool when rolling that skill. You want to add a 3rd dot to stealth. It might be like 2 experience times the cost of the current level. So in this case, if you've got 2 dots, 2 times your current level, so it would cost 4 experience points to buy your 3rd dot.
Yep.
So you just purchase it.
Yeah, 7C does the exact same thing.
So, yeah, 7C does the exact same thing, yes.
Yep. And so you're not being told what you have to get. You're not being gifted anything at that level. Literally, if you don't spend points, you don't progress.
Yeah, you don't progress. But also there's no direct linear progression to it from the standpoint of there's no levels.
Your traits aren't just going up. Your stats don't just automatically increase.
Exactly. And there's no like level 1 to level 2 to level 3 or anything like that. You just purchase whatever you want. So this is kind of where you have both vertical and horizontal progression. If you keep pouring all of your points into the same ability, you have vertical progression. Because each point makes that one thing better than the last. That's vertical.
Yep.
However, if you choose to diversify your skills, buy a bunch of low-level stuff, and spread yourself out to widen your toolbox, and that's horizontal.
And honestly, I think you could argue in certain places where classes in D&D between levels basically create horizontal progression, where it's like, I'm not really getting more powerful so much as I have now more abilities that open up different tools. And I'm thinking more along the lines like School of Lore Bard or expertise and things like that kind of sit in between, that fill out and I'm going to say it, blank levels.
Yeah.
But that still doesn't stop certain skill sets within those that say, increase by level. It's so much per level.
Your proficiency bonus is going up. Your hit point total is going up.
So there's still an advancement within that, and that's why those are classified. So remember that what we're talking about is the overall advancement here, not within it. But again, very steep for what you can do within White Wolf, particularly, and I would say even to the same argument, 7C. You become a god at doing things.
Yeah.
Way better than than anybody in their right mind should at that curve.
So, I guess the big question here is, what does any of this have to do with being a storyteller?
I mean, that's fair.
We just talked a lot about a bunch of different definitions, and what horizontal looks like, what vertical looks like, what you can have both in the same system.
I'm going to answer one question that just came up in the chat.
Yeah, sure.
Knox asked blank levels. So the term blank levels is actually was kind of coined in the concept that at this progression point you don't get a new ability, but your stats will increase, or existing power sets that are based upon your level denote that you have a new level.
Yeah.
And that's where the term comes from. It's actually used a lot more in digital games now, where you just get a level up, but you don't get anything for it. There's no appreciable thing, but you're now doing more damage because like your strength automatically went up, or whatever based upon your class affects you in that way. So they just call it a blank level because you don't get anything new, but really you're still getting new things.
It's a level you don't get a present with a bow on
exactly.
it.
There you go. You don't get a present. That's a great way to put it.
Your sneak attack didn't go up. You don't get an extra feat. You don't get an ability increase. It's just, oh, congrats, you get to roll hit points.
Yeah. And so it doesn't feel like anything, but then when you look at your character sheet, you're like, oh, well, this is based upon my level, and this is based upon my level. And okay, that makes more sense. So, so that's where blank levels come through. So back to storytelling.
Yeah, what does this have to do with anything? Why are we talking about this today?
Well, let's start with the very basics. Players like to advance.
Yeah.
They like to feel like they're getting more powerful. Let's just straight up say it that a lot of games, the power fantasy is there.
Everybody does, and and I want to take a moment to kind of address the stigma of that too, because I think even as I was writing that on the notes, for today's show,
you're like, ew.
Yeah, I was kind of like, it almost felt a little bad to say people enjoy power fantasy, because I think it has a kind of a negative connotation of oh, you just like the power fantasy of it, but no,
no, I do.
Objectively, I do. We all like the power fantasy. It's one of the reasons we play these fantastical games where we pretend to be elves and wizards and dwarves that call upon the mighty smith god to smite their foes with flame strikes and stuff. We all enjoy that stuff, and it's not because we want to feel weak or ordinary.
Mm-mm.
It's a power fantasy.
And that's fine.
And it's absolutely fine. It's part of the escapism. It's part of the joy of playing that. So I want to say, when I say the words power fantasy, that is not derogatory at all. That
Anybody who's picked up an air guitar and ripped a riff listening to some rock, that's a power fantasy as well.
Man, I have a whole show about how we love narrative gaming, here, and how to be a good storyteller and best practices at tabletop games. But man, did it feel good to rip almost a max damage cone of cold into that asshole the other game,
and then describe it to you in grisly detail what you found,
and then give a speech to his frozen impaled corpse.
Yep.
Yeah. And then tell the guards that were sitting there watching, that were horrified by the thing that I just did to them, yeah, don't F with me.
Yeah.
I'm the unforgiving winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaving.
Yeah, they had names for you.
That was my power fantasy.
And it was wonderful.
And it was beautiful.
Yep.
But that's one of the big reasons why advancement is so important to us in these games.
Without a doubt.
Because we all enjoy the power fantasy. And if you're not getting stronger, the game kind of stagnates a little bit,
Well, and the other thing is and I'm going to say this, when you're imagining everything that's going on at the table, when your mind is literally having to be creative about everything, there is something comforting to be able to look down at a page and see progression.
Oh, yeah.
To see physical progression. So it kind of goes back to literally board gaming. Watching your piece move has a good feeling to it. It means you're making progress. But when you're imagining literally everything, it's really hard to feel like there's progress.
Sure.
And having that advancement gives you something. Mm-hmm. It feels like a gain, and that's what and people like that. We don't want to sit at our jobs and have losses. We don't want to be sitting in traffic feeling losses. Yes, everyone says it's really the friends that you met along the way, but the truth of the matter is we like to see advancement. We like to see that we did something. The plaques on our walls, to say, I made it through college. Whoo! Why not?
Absolutely. And, I don't think there's a single one among us that sits down and, during character creation and doesn't, look at, okay, well, I have to make this as my starting level character, but eventually I'd like to grow into this. Somewhere down the line, I'm going to be able to throw a cone of cold, maybe not today, but man, that spell's going to be, so useful to me eventually, and I'm going to be happy about it,
Yeah, and that's the inspiration and drive that we have going forward. I mean, to start out as at a godlike feeling and never progress feels stale. It doesn't give you it. If it's just a one-shot, sure, that's great. You're focused on the story. You're not focused on the character advancement. Yeah. I would dare say that Mouse Guard often would feel very stale if it wasn't for the heavy narrative that is in it.
Yeah, I agree.
And that it's so focused.
I agree.
And to that counterpoint, I'll flat out say this, Shadowrun does that for me. I don't feel like Shadowrun, to me, has advancement. Okay. It just has gear, kind of. And I use gear in a very loose term.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know Shadowrun well enough.
Yeah, I mean, whether or not, I'm getting more cyberware, the chances of me upgrading my cyberware happens when I'm, super powered with money.
Yeah.
And I'm neck deep in everything. Until then, it's been a slog. And the game has advancement, don't get me wrong. But realistically, the game is more about story, even though it has as much technicality and mechanics involved in it.
Sure.
And a lot of people complain that the game can feel quite not progressive, like that you're really not getting anywhere if the game doesn't have a good story wrapped around it. And I see that. I definitely understand that.
Yeah.
So unless there are other mechanics in the game, like Blades in the Dark, where literally the crew advances, the story shows physical growth and progression within its own mechanics, not even story-wise. Like, it's forcing to show you, like, hey, you guys gained ground, kind of a thing. Those types of things, the One Ring does that, where, like, you're literally traveling and completing things.
Yeah.
It's board game-like.
No, it's hex crawl-like, you know.
Yeah, that's what I say.
Very old school, yeah.
Yeah, it's very old school. So in that sense, you're feeling like you're having progression versus physically seeing on my sheet that I have grown as an individual.
And, like, for me, like, I think back to, like, even the most popular, like, books and TV series, right? I mean, immediately my mind goes to Harry Dresden in the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. Does your main character grow, or do they remain the same from book to book? Does the villain grow, or does the villain remain the same? You know?
And by how much growth, yeah.
And by how much growth. Like, are the stakes higher each book or each season? Do the higher stakes force the main character to grow to match them? You look at Harry Dresden in book 1, Stormfront, and you look at Harry Dresden as of the last book, I think it was like book 18 or 20, I forgot where we're at now. But, I mean, he's nearly godlike in power. I mean, he's fighting essentially a demigod in the last book. You know, whereas he had trouble with a rogue sorcerer in the first bok.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Wheel of Time that does that with kids to heroes kind of a situation almost.
Yeah. Definitely the Ta'veren, the main three characters. They start off as farmers essentially and sheep herders, and by the end of it, one of them is the Dragon Reborn, who is the savior of all mankind and is literally fighting the Dark One.
Yeah, coming into the truth of who they are. So, I mean, stories like that definitely present themselves. I mean, Lord of the Rings, without a doubt, you see the same type of thing. Even grizzled old veterans showing change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And advancement to a degree.
Frodo's not the same Hobbit that left the Shire.
No.
In fact, that's kind of a major point in the ending, is that they can't go home because who are they now, you know?
Yeah, and Aragorn to the same degree.
Yeah.
Instead of becoming a better fighter, he became a better leader.
Yeah.
Which he never was, because he started out as a lone wolf, For those in our Discord who saw the links, totally worth it. But, so... Now that we know advancement is important, regardless of how we're looking at it,
it's equally important to understand how it's going to affect your game.
Right. I was trying to think of a good way to say it differently, but that's effectively the truth.
Yeah.
Because it's going to change your game, and it automatically does. When we start as storytellers, our mind is always about in the next game of, how am I going to make it a challenge?
Yeah. Because
you have to look at the gauge that's set in front of you, which is your players. And we talk about, especially with D&D, CR. And we all know, anybody who's, I take this back, not everyone knows this, anyone who's run D&D for more than 5 sessions knows that CR is a load of crap.
CR is challenge rating, by the way, sorry.
Yeah, and it's a load of crap.
It kind of is, yeah. It's very difficult to judge.
Right. There are some decent tools out there that will help you. Kobold Fight Club is a wonderful thing. And it does give you some stuff. D&D has their own encounter thing. But the truth of the matter is we know that all that is doing is trying to factor threat versus defense versus threat. And all of that is just hard to calculate because there's so much random involved. And you can never calculate that your players know what to do with all of their abilities. So in that sense, it can get really, really hard to figure out how to pace that advancement.
Yeah.
Not from your side of the table.
Not only even pacing the advancement, but pacing a story alongside that advancement.
Yeah. You loved one of the greatest examples you've ever given, which is a digital example, and I think it's a fantastic one, is the Skyrim, like, bandits.
Yeah. Like at the beginning of the game, like, you face bandits. They're a bunch of ragtag people in leather scraps for armor with crappy iron weapons and stuff like that, because they're bandits living in a cave. They're essentially, refugees from the law,
But, like, if you just go around hunting wolves and level yourself up so that you can do better against the bandits and then go back to their camp to go kick their butt, they're just at the same level as you are. Now they have, like,
they're
magical
all bandit
bows.
Kings with magical bows and Daedric
wizards
armor
and shit, and you're like, what happened? Like, why aren't they going and killing the Jarl? Like,
right? Oh, it's and why? Why are they? Well, because it's a contrived game mechanic. Because they have to be a challenge for you. But so the game levels them up.
But it doesn't feel like a story at that point.
Exactly.
And it
feels like a video game.
And that's what we don't want when we sit down at a tabletop session.
It breaks your verisimilitude.
We don't want your first level characters who've been helping small villages around the kingdom, around the castle, fighting goblins, to suddenly now either A, there's more goblins now that they've been fighting and killing all of the goblins and clearing them out. Like, now they're fighting the Goblin King and his 30 goblin army because they're level 5, and that's the appropriate threat rating. Why didn't the Goblin King just march on the castle?
Yeah.
Like, what was he doing with these farms?
Yeah, exactly. So, matching your pacing with your advancement is absolutely critical to keeping your story alive and keeping your verisimilitude intact, i.e. the illusion of realism. Okay? Verisimilitude, for those of you who do not know the word, we use it semi-frequently on the show, but we'll define it once again because it is a big word, is we use that in place of the word realism, because realism describes real life.
Yes.
Verisimilitude means real within context.
So whether you're in a fantasy world that depicts something that is slightly medieval, the verisimilitude would basically say that there's lords and a king, and you're expected to have gentry and things like that to make it feel like it would work, versus having ridiculous things out of balance.
And like, verisimilitude even strays into your fantasy elements. Okay, so
very
like
much so.
If you say there are airships, but they all move very slowly because they're super heavy, and the magic it takes to keep them afloat is weak. If you had one zipping through the sky at 100 miles an hour, that would break verisimilitude, because you've established that slow-moving airships is what's real. Fast-moving airships are unrealistic.
Yeah.
Compared to that. So that's what we're talking about when we're saying verisimilitude. Okay?
Like people complaining about space whales in The Mandalorian because there is nothing in space in the Star Wars universe that we all know about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fanboys, get over yourself.
I don't even engage.
It's fine. It's fine. But needless to say, this is where Sarah has in bold print that I have to stop talking about ways to deal with this, because we're going to get to this in a couple episodes.
All right. So, anyways, if your characters advance too quickly or steeply, they may outgrow the story before you get to the point of it. Okay.
Yes.
And so, like, your antagonist is going to become way too easy to handle if they present a problem that can be addressed through direct application of the character's abilities, i.e., if a monster only continues to be a threat as long as it's unkillable. Okay? Because I guarantee you, your players will choose the most direct and most permanent solution to any problem you pose them to. And death is pretty direct and pretty permanent.
It is.
So, if PCs find themselves capable of facing it and slaying it, they can remove it. And so, if your story depends on the longevity of this monster, and you want it to have ripple effects down, you didn't kill this monster for X amount of time, and now it's doing, X, Y, and Z problem. Well, if they kill it in Act 2, or, in Game Session 2, it doesn't get the longevity to cause those problems, and now suddenly the rest of the story you had kind of scribbled down in your notes changes.
Yep.
And, I mean, this is okay in some aspects. If you're, playing a game, play to find out sort of game, like Powered by the Apocalypse, hey, okay, stuff happens. We roll with it. But sometimes we've put some work into this story. And sometimes changes like that leave us a little high and dry for ideas. So, it's something to keep an eye on when doling out advancement. Now, I will say, this is, like you said, the point at which I have a bold note on the thing to stop discussing this. Because what happens when your heroes outlevel the threat in your show, or in your story, is literally the topic of show 204.
Is it 204 or 202?
204. Today is 202.
Oh, 204 then. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry.
Yes. So, we were going to be going much deeper into how to handle this later.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
Pin right there. We're leaving that right there.
Now, the other alternative is we advance too slowly, and your story outpaces them.
Yes.
I would say this is probably less of a problem because you can literally just give out more advances.
Yeah.
It's difficult to take away levels because then you've got to kind of the cat's already kind of out of the bag. You've got to kind of like.
Some people hamper this to the fact that you can give out equipment that is the effect of a level.
Yeah.
And that can be used up, broken, changed, require maintenance, things that will alter the curve, if you will, because it can't be used. The fighter isn't going to grab all of the powerful artifacts that can only be used by other classes, stack it on himself, and become a god, and you have one god character, and the rest will just sit back and do their nails,
Oh, the armor of invulnerability.
Yes, yes, that's it. But the whole idea is then...
Extra points if you got the reference.
Yeah, the point of that is that it basically forces them to constantly run from the overthreats. And look forward to its destruction, which may never come.
Yeah.
Because they just can't get to that point.
And you got to keep in mind too, like, if your characters end up underpowered for a threat that you present to them, we talked a lot about how players enjoy power fantasy. If you give them a threat that they legitimately cannot handle, you essentially blunt that power fantasy. You make them incapable of dealing with the thing that you just gave them. They feel helpless. They feel confused. They feel out of options. They feel useless. And that's not a great place for your characters to be in. The second one, and you hear this pretty frequently if you look for stories, especially about like Dungeons and Dragons characters and whatnot, is sometimes we do this on purpose. Sometimes we throw out something that the players aren't supposed to be able to deal with, like, hey, I know you're level 3, but here's a white dragon.
Yeah.
And sometimes the players don't figure out that in the back of your head you're going, oh, they'll run from this.
The opening of Dark Souls, or not Dark Souls, of Elden Ring. Is it Dark Souls or Elden Ring? Where basically they kill you.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the, literally first fight.
Elden Ring, welcome to Elden Ring. Here is a grafted scion that will two-shot you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
This is how life is going to be. But the game literally is meant to kill you at that point, to remind you that this is the curve, versus you handing a white dragon to your players and basically say, without saying, run.
Yeah.
And now they're like, oh, we have to fight this thing.
Yeah, because they may not conceive that they're not supposed to fight it. They may, but, because they're probably thinking like, okay, well, you're not going to throw anything at us that we can't deal with, right? Like,
but
we're adventurers. We're supposed to be capable. We've got to be able to kill this dragon.
But I'll argue to say that is a meta discussion that should have hit the table immediately when it happened.
Sure.
But
sometimes it doesn't.
Oftentimes it doesn't.
Because
communication is not always great at the beginning.
Exactly. And without some of that communication, it can get really frustrating for the PCs.
Oh,
especially
very much
when that dragon rightly starts wiping the walls with the third level characters. And then the PCs think, oh, you're just trying to kill us. You're just being an adversarial DM. You're trying to TPK us.
Yep.
No, guys, I wanted you to run from it.
Yeah.
And that's where the story starts, is you guys running from a dragon, But maybe better ways of doing that than handing them a threat that they can't handle and then expecting them not to try to handle it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the best things you can do is have that threat visibly slightly away from them, doing horrible things to things that they know are powerful, only to bring it within their threat radius and make a decision that forces their hand.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with telegraphing hits. There's nothing wrong with that. One of the best ones that I read about was a guy who was going to do that. He wanted to open the game with a dragon destroying the city that the players were in. Not the capital city, but the city that the players were starting in. Because he had them go do a session 0 in a milk run, and then they came back, and they were all drinking there, and then the threat happened. And he said, I'm really worried my players are going to try and fight this thing in this town. And he said, and almost everybody was like, well, first off, just have the town get wrecked around them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't ever give them the threat.
Yeah.
Like, they're never going to get the threat in front of them. What they're going to have is obstacles that are well beyond their level. Here is a building on fire in front of you. You're going to have to go this way or that way. And everything just basically forces them in directions. Now, they can move around things. They can make their own decisions. They can get better looks at it. They can do whatever they want. But anything that's actively engaging with it is telling them to get away and forcing them back. The guard are trying to keep people safe, to the point where they recognize that it was their job to basically help refugees. Do they? Do they not? Do they just run scared? That's your story.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, I never thought that was my story. I thought my story was going to be a revenge story. And he said, so I threw it in front of my players, and they basically tried to rally with the guards, and I had the guards be like, no, get the hell out of town.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is dangerous. You need to get people to safety. And they're like, okay, we'll get people to safety. And they started rallying people and taking them and getting them hidden off in the caves that they just cleared out. And I was like,
yep,
there you go. Now they're big damn heroes. And then he was just like, so I literally, at the end of the session, like, everybody was in the cave was getting, knocked over, and they had to help get everyone out of the cave the next day because it was covered in, and then they came back to a ruined village.
Yeah.
With no guards.
Yeah.
Just ash and dust.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, the first thing, that they said was, we have to get word to the capital. I'm like, and your game begins.
Yeah. Yep.
And that was, he's like, that turned out way better than anyone could have expected. And that's the thing, is you have to think about your encounters differently to handle those.
That's what you get when you start Legend of Vox Machina in Season 2.
Yep, exactly.
So our topics, I know we usually go well into the hour here, but I wanted to kind of cut the discussion short a little bit because we had a bunch of really good questions.
Yes.
This week.
We're still going to go well into the hour. Don't get us wrong.
Oh, yeah, but it's going to be because of the really excellent questions that we got, not because we are prattling on about our topics. So.
Do we want to bounce around in these, or do you just want to pound right through them?
Grab one, I don't care.
Okay, I'm going to go down to Nifty Hat.
All right.
So we'll start with this one. Are there multi-session or longer form systems that don't have to use vertical progression as a crutch to the game not having engaging enough core mechanics?
Tell us what you really think, Nifty Hat.
Yeah. At the design level, is it mandatory to include some sort of a number go-up system for games that are being played for more than 1 to 2 sessions to have wide appeal? That is an interesting... I like the question.
I don't think so. I think we've seen a couple, especially their more narrative games that have...
Lasers and Feelings...
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Lasers and Feelings is designed for more than 1 or 2 game sessions, so I think that Nifty Hat's talking more about, a longer, at least 4-session campaign, that goes on a little bit like that, where you would be expected to have some advancement mechanics. I don't remember Morkborg's... Morkborg, I think it just gives you some minor upgrades, but OSR is really good about being really super stingy with upgrades, but they still do kind of have some vertical progression. I want to say Arc Dooms was really horizontal if it even existed.
Yeah, because everything was exceptionally dangerous.
Yeah.
It was already a dangerous system to start with.
What system did we review recently that had no progression in it?
That's a good question.
There was a game system recently that had 0 progression in it. I would say, though, Nifty Hat, probably the answer you're looking for is there's... I think every game system is going to have some sort of vertical progression. Even if it is an extremely flat curve, it's still going to be a curve.
Are you saying progression or vertical progression?
The question was specifically systems that don't have or use vertical progression.
Yeah, I would say that... You know what? Go ahead and answer. I kind of have my own that I'm formulating.
I feel like veritably every system is going to have at least a little bit of vertical progression to it. I think that's just the nature of the beast, and I don't think you truly feel like you're advancing with an advancement system unless you can look back on your character a couple of advances ago and say, I am in some way measurably better than I was. But also, I don't think that that's a crutch for game systems having not engaging enough core mechanics, as you say. I don't think vertical progression is bad. I just think vertical progression can get out of hand and be difficult to keep up with in a story. Some curves are steeper than others, but vertical progression as a concept is not a bad thing.
No, it is not a bad thing. I am going to say that in most of the systems that I'm running through my head right now that don't really use vertical progression, where it isn't an obvious thing, that you don't need it. If the core story mechanics are there for you. And what I'm saying is something like Dune.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have a hard vertical progression, but the game's progression horizontally is effectively your vertical progression. It's a story progression.
As in your rewards are in, I overpowered my enemy and took some of their holdings,
right,
etc.
It is much akin to the takeovers of the crew in Blades in the Dark.
Yep.
Or progression, tile progression, hex progression.
Yep. Yep.
Those types of things where you definitely feel like you are gaining ground. Mm-hmm. Within the story. And I think games that I think the mechanics are there for those. I think they are, but I dare say that there are other systems that talk about using that same type of I have leveraged myself into a new position where I can continue. And I feel like I am progressing. I think progression must be part of the system. If that isn't there. And I dare say systems that have vertical progression often lack mechanical progression in other ways of the story. They lean too hard into vertical progression as a means to show that the game is good.
Yeah, okay. I'll back you up on that one. Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it in way too many game systems. So I think in the turn, which is where my headspace was, is like you can get away with not having a lot of story mechanics if your vertical progression is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's flashy enough stuff at the top of the Christmas tree, then it's
yeah, absolutely. Pretty much. If you walk down for Christmas and there are tons of gifts, are you upset at your parents?
No. Depends.
Yeah.
Depends.
All right, your turn.
All right, so Nevin asked a bunch of them, so I'm going to dip into some of these here.
Go for it.
All right, so besides horizontal and vertical progression systems, what other types are there?
To me, I'm going to say this. We broke it down in vertical and horizontal progression. We're not talking about the curves, which there are many of.
Yeah.
And in tabletop role-playing, vertical and horizontal are the not pragmatic examples. They are the predominant examples that you will find.
Yes.
Not to say that there aren't variants within both of those that you could have different terminology for.
Sure.
But I would say as you get into digital RPGs and things like that, there are tons of other design styles that mimic and or that could be misconstrued as not vertical or not horizontal, but a mixture of maybe the two at different times.
Yeah, sure. We've been playing Monster Hunter lately, and that's got a vertical and horizontal progression system in it in the weapon upgrades, because your character doesn't become more powerful, but the gear that you make makes them more powerful in various situations.
Yeah,
and then you'll craft stronger versions of the same weapon. Mm-hmm. So this poison weapon becomes a stronger poison weapon. That's vertical progression. But also, I've also made a thunder type weapon and a stun type weapon. That's horizontal progression. There's more tools in my toolbox.
Right. And in that sense, you're not really, levels have no reference or relevance, except for what you're going up against.
Exactly.
And that's there's a whole design scheme about balance between those two vectors.
Mm-hmm.
So what the player has versus what the non-player elements are, and the boss elements are.
And actually, I think Monster Hunter is a great example too, because when you look at it, you're like, oh, that's gear progression, not character progression. But when your gear is the only way of making your character more powerful, is there a difference effectively between the two of them? No, there isn't.
Yeah.
Now that you have the gear, you are capable of advancing in the story. So, bam, that's your progression system, like it or not. Know.
Yep.
All right. Nevim also asks, often the progression is based on some XP currency. Even with the guideline given by the game, it's sometimes hard to know if the amount given at the end of the scenario is the proper amount. Should I adapt the amount based on the frequency, the length of the game session?
Yes. I'm going to say yes, but the terms you're using as in frequency or length are not nearly as important.
I agree.
I think it has more to do with, are your players enjoying it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you, as a storyteller, able to keep up with the advancement within that system, within your story?
Yeah.
Meaning, if your story is about kids on bikes and being afraid of the dark, giving them a bunch of progression after a year may not mean anything.
Right.
It may mean that they are no longer kids on bikes. They are now
teenagers on bikes.
Teenagers in cars,
mm-hmm.
which you don't want because now they're just not going to do your story the same way.
Yeah, they're just going to sit around all day. They're not going to listen to you. They're playing video games. They're on TikTok.
Yeah. So the whole point of it is that I would say it is less about the frequency and length of your sessions. And if that's the case, then you're playing a sandbox game with your friends. And sure, that may work very well to try and figure out whether or not your players feel like they're moving through the sandbox.
Yeah. My answer here is base it around your pacing.
Mm-hmm.
Your pacing is what you want to do. Try to eyeball how long your story is taking to tell, and what is the next major milestone like in the story.
And I will put the word milestone and threat in the same category depending on the type of game.
Yeah. So like for me, we're in Act 2 of my game right now, and I've got a climactic ending of this act is boiling essentially right now. It's at a low simmer, and we're leading up to a sort of climactic end. By the end of this, I want you guys to tip over from seasoned to heroic.
Mm-hmm.
I think I know about how many game sessions that's going to take, given how fast our group moves and stuff like that. So I know I need to drop 2 more advances in there. One in the middle of where we are now and the end, and one at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my advancement.
Yep.
That's how I'm doing it. This is also a big reason why I like things like milestone advancements for D&D, because you don't have to depend on calculating a number and trying to eyeball how fast that number is going to total up to your next level. You literally just get to say, you level at this point.
Yeah. And another example of that I will give, which is a little different, because in your game, we don't see the finish line. We're still being presented with it, and that happens in a lot of games. You don't put your bad guy right out front. You don't put the immediate threat to them. In some systems, you do. In some games, you immediately start with a dragon moved in. That is not something that is in this world, and the dragon needs to be taken care of. Okay, you know the threat level that has been established. You established it at the beginning.
Yep.
So your players know that at the end of the game, when everything is said and done, they will have to take care of a dragon. So their progression in their mind is to be able to take care of a dragon. If you know that what the rating on that dragon is, and your goal is to make sure that you can make that fight fair for them, quote unquote, balanced and fair, there is nothing to say that you basically just set your thing to say at the end of the game you will all be level 5. Okay, so that's where we're going to progress to, and I'm going to put my milestones between here and there.
Oh, we're out of tea.
I'm sorry. And the hot pot's way over there. I'll grab it in a second for the next question.
Okay.
But the whole thing then is you can then set the pacing. Do the same thing behind the screen, quote unquote. If you know where your story is going to go, and you know at the end you're going to have a bunch of ninjas and a ninja master, and he's basically, in your mindset, a 8th level barbarian monk, 8 level monk, 2 levels of barbarian. Okay, there's your level. There's your cap. You now know.
Yep.
Use that as a gauge to set your pacing.
Yep. And you think it's going to take them 8 sessions to get there. They need to gain 2 levels. Well, guess what? Every 4 game sessions, they gain a level.
There you go.
There you go. Boom.
Yep. And if you need to slow down, slow down.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm going to throw the question and see where we go for this next one. So another of Nevin's, which I think is fantastic that we're getting all these. In some games, the XP received can be spread during the game session to receive some kind... Or spent. I'm sorry, I didn't spend spent during the game session to receive some kind of advantage. What are your feelings on such systems? I like those, but the system, and in those cases is, and what we're talking about is like, hey, in Mouse Guard, I can spend my checks during the game while the game is actively playing during my turn to do something versus make an advancement to my character.
I think Numenera has a system like that, and I'm pretty sure, is it Karma or Edge or something like that you use in Shadowrun?
Yep, and then 7C Drama Dice are the same thing.
Yeah.
You can spend those as well. And the point behind those is that you're burning your currency to make story happen in all those cases in some amazing way. And in my personal opinion, I love that. I love that you're doing, but you have to make those moments have weight.
I'm of 2 minds on them. I'm going to be honest. I am of 2 minds on them because on one hand, I do like, having to make that choice of like, is it worth it to you to burn, that currency to directly impact the story and stuff like that. And yeah, like I said, you do want to make it impactful when that happens. But I think there's a part of me that dislikes the concept of I suppose I don't want to say penalizing. It's not really penalizing, but you come out of it with less experience to spend on advancing your character, right? You're slowing your own progression to affect the story directly. And I feel like your meta currency for affecting the story should be kept separate from your advancement mechanic, simply because I feel like if you are doing that, you're adding to the story, not subtracting from it, so it shouldn't cost you your advancement. You follow?
I was going to say the alternative to that is you have the players who don't use it because they want to advance.
Yeah,
and don't affect the story ever.
It disincentivizes it,
which is what happens in which happened in a lot of 7th games, where you'd have players who just weren't choosing to be. They want to be engaged in the story, but they don't want to spend their drama dice to do so.
Yeah, because at the end of the game, I get to turn in my drama die for an experience point
and each. I really, really want that extra swordsman dot.
I really want to buy that extra Porte power.
Right. And so you're constantly playing with that. Do I spend it? Don't I spend it?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why I'm glad in Savage Worlds, Bennies is not converted to XP.
Bennies don't convert to XP.
They just die.
I know a lot of people try to use that special rule called difficult choices, I think it is, where every time you guys spend a Benny, it goes into my pocket.
Yeah, I like that mechanic, but I hate it at the same time.
I hate it because I don't ever want you guys looking at your bennies and thinking, I shouldn't spend this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Never.
Well,
never. They're there to be spent. I want a high Benny economy.
Right. And I think that gritty consequences breed that. You see that in a lot of other games where it's like, hey, do you want to make a bargain? It's going to cost you.
Yeah, sure.
But this will come through. It's a guaranteed win.
Sure.
And it's like, ooh.
But that's not the type of story we're telling, though.
Right, exactly.
So that doesn't fit.
Yep.
So anyways, that's how I feel about it. I don't like burning your advancement to add to the story like that. But I get it. You know?
Yep. Often XP's given. Is this right? Yeah. Often XP given in the rules are toward one character, meaning at the end of the game session, following the rule, there will be a slight difference between characters. How to avoid jealousy between players? Oh, how do you avoid jealousy between players? Should I give the same progression to the group? I remember this. I remember in early D&D this was a thing. That if certain players who were effectively greedy, or game systems where you use the term kill stealing, where basically you were out leveling other players at the table.
Mm-hmm.
I will flat out say I hated this mechanic because it felt like the story wasn't important unless you were engaged. You had to be engaged.
Yeah.
And it was easy to just be slightly outside of that curve, the bell curve, basically. Like, you had the players who were very engaged, and you had the players who weren't engaged, and the difference between those was like the 80th percentile. Because if you stayed engaged, but you didn't give enough, you didn't make it high enough to get enough XP to be effective, basically.
Right. And aside from the fact that that doesn't account for a lot of other realities of people just being people.
Yeah.
Oh, you missed a game session. Yeah, well, my, kid was sick in the hospital, so yeah, I missed a game session. Oh, yeah, well, everybody's level 5 now and you're only level 4,
Yeah.
Okay, because my kid was sick? Cool.
Yeah, like, my character was there.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. They were in the phantom realm, whatever.
Or whatever, things like that. Engagement levels. Okay, some of us have social anxiety. Some of us are not good at just grabbing the limelight and shining it on ourselves whenever we want.
Some of us had a crappy week.
Yeah,
and now we're sitting there at the game.
Energy.
Yeah, I at least made it to the session. I'm being involved, but I'm not as involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not getting those drama dice because I'm not being dramatic.
Then there's the storyteller designed an encounter that was trivial for the wizard, but was utterly frustrating and debilitating for the fighter.
Yep.
Well, the wizard contributed more today, so they get more experience. Well, why? Like, okay, so it was a zombie encounter. The cleric turned them all. What was the fighter supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the cleric did all the work. Of course they did. They snapped their fingers and won the encounter.
Well, another thing is you also have the other side of that, which I'll ask you this: how do you feel about the mouse guard voting system?
There's a part of me that loves it, and a large part of it that gives me social anxiety every single time because I am expected to allow a room full of people to point at me and tell me I did good, which is a thing that makes me uncomfortable.
That is fair, but at the same time, not every mouse guard table is as close of friends as we are. And people vie for doing their checks and things like that. So the game itself is a very narrative game, and I would say it has to be very tight-knit, otherwise it doesn't play the same. But for advancement, you're picking. You are choosing. And sometimes the story doesn't let your goal be made. So you don't get that. You don't get those points for that.
Yeah, it's just the opportunity just doesn't present itself, yeah.
So sometimes you just don't get the bonuses that everyone else gets. And that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Would I say that there is a jealousy that can happen there? 100%.
Sure.
How do you avoid that jealousy? You can't. And I'm going to say these words to you because I think it fits more with this statement than anything else. As a storyteller, you cannot control the emotions of the people at your table. Stop trying to set expectations on whether or not they will be jealous or hateful or uncomfortable.
Or happy or even notice. Yep.
Literally, vibe check at the beginning of your game and understand that everybody comes with different things and will leave with different things.
Yep.
Just make sure the communication is open. But the moment you start worrying whether or not mechanics are going to cause jealousy, you are going way too far.
Yeah,
You're going way too far. They will let you know,
mm-hmm.
and that's when you can react.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you can react and help the game become better.
All right, yeah. All right, so Nevim's next question here. When and how do I deal with character progression in a story?
That's where I'm keeping my mouth shut.
Entirely dependent upon the story you're telling, and
Episode 204, please. Could we just move on? Because I want to say so much. There's so many things that you could say to that statement.
Okay, that's fine. Don't answer
it. I can't answer this one.
No, I'm just saying, is it your? I think advancement in your story really needs to depend on the story that you're telling.
Yes.
Every story is unique. Every system is unique and how it handles advancement and stuff like that. So, I think it's too broad of a question to accurately answer.
Yeah.
Honestly.
There's a show about this.
I tend to like doing it at dramatic moments, though.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to be my cheap and easy answer, is just, I like doing it at dramatic moments. You guys accomplished a major thing in the story, fine, you get an advance out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a ground rule that works well for Savage Worlds.
The age-old answer that I will give is this. In almost every major story, there are 2 points when advancement occurs. One, at the opening, meaning it is presented to you to show you that you will advance, which is often a gift given to the hero. They gain a special weapon that they don't even know how to use.
Here, Luke, here's your lightsaber.
Exactly. But it shows where they will end up.
Yep.
And oftentimes that's a telegraphed move between you and the character that says, okay, I'm giving you this, but you don't know you don't know how to even utilize this.
You're a Jedi.
Exactly.
Spoilers,
yeah.
Obi-Wan, come on.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Yeah.
Like all of this kind of stuff. And then the other is, like you said, at a point of growth.
Yeah.
When the story makes a dramatic turn, so do the characters.
Luke springs Leia out of the holding cell in the Death Star. Level up.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
So.
All right. So Nevin's got 2 more here. Let's hit him real quick, and then we're going to we can hit Mickey's.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So a few games have progression mechanisms for the storyteller, meaning the possibilities of the storyteller evolve through time. What are your feelings on such systems? I'm thinking of the Japanese game Ryutama. I'll be honest with you, I did not have time to... You graciously provided us a link to Ryutama. I did not have time to research it.
You know, I'm going to say this. I'm aware of these systems. I know I've looked at a couple game systems that have these, where as the story progresses and gets deeper, the storyteller gets more tools to use. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Urban Shadows has some mechanics for this in it, where basically as the doom clock rises, you get more effort to be able to
more
put
moves?
more effort to spend.
Okay.
Because otherwise you're hampered by how much you can spend.
Oh, gotcha.
As on the story side. I kind of like this because as long as the players are aware of it, they know that as the story progresses, things are going to get challenging and more challenging. Because it's right straight there. To a degree, 7th Sea did this with drama. And presented it so, like, you know, all of you were presented with a certain amount of drama at the beginning of the game, and then you spent that drama and gave it to me to spend into the story.
Yeah.
And it is way more present in 2nd edition, that cost turnover, because now it's mine to spend.
Right.
And that's the mechanics where, okay, now I have weight to be able to do things within the story against you to make it more dramatic, to increase rates, to make things more stressful, stuff like that. So I think, from my perspective, it definitely puts a different lilt on the storytelling, as long as the players are very aware of that's what it's doing. It can't be subjective. It can't be like, oh, by the way, now that I have these dice, here I'm spending 2, so your challenge rating just went up from a 10 to 15.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh crap, the world just got tougher because of this. No, you have to. That has to be telegraphed well in advance.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I dislike systems like this. I especially dislike it if it's tied to a dice mechanic. Because I feel like the more the storyteller touches dice and adds random elements into the story, the more things can go off the rails, and the more it can potentially screw the players based on a die roll.
I'm going to go of the same mind. I don't like it. I don't like doing it. I think there's a place for it, and there's some gauging for it if you want to do it. Like, I didn't do it in 7th Sea. I could have, and I didn't.
You did, though.
Only during boss fights.
There was, I mean, I don't say this is like...
But let me finish my statement.
Yeah.
Every time I have ever used it, it has hampered the story from the player's perspective. They have not felt comfortable with it, ever.
Yeah.
I've never had a table comfortable with it, nor have I ever had a table comfortable with things coming out that are clearly in the rules, but, like, had never been used. Layer actions.
Yeah.
Bosses being able to do interrupt in a fight. Like, where did this come from? Alterations that the storyteller has as a tool set that the players are unaware of, and they become a surprise. dice surprises, changes, things like that, make the game very uncomfortable.
For me, I am a lot more comfortable. Like, first of all, I've started rolling all of my dice out in the open.
Always.
Just because it takes that layer of ambiguity out of any of the game, whatnot, and removing the screen between myself and the players. Removes a layer of adversity between us.
But giving them just the dice to roll, you don't have any.
Exactly.
Hands off.
Exactly. You see, Powered by the Apocalypse does this a lot. Blades in the Dark does this. The Storyteller doesn't touch the dice. If there's something like, oh, you're being swung at, it's not that I'm rolling to hit you. You're rolling to defend.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Simple as that.
Okay, you want to do something to me? Cool. Now you need to roll this.
And you already know the target numbers. There's they're being set together at the table. Yeah. It's not me being a problem here. I'm literally just refereeing the rule set.
Yeah. I tend to like the Storyteller seat to be as hands-off and as stable as possible. So having background rules that your players may or may not be familiar with, comfortable with, that change how they think things should work, just sounds like a recipe for disaster to me.
No.
Or, I mean, if not disaster, at least someone coming away from it a little disgruntled and not enjoying as much as they could.
Yep. I'd like to leave Nevim's last question for the very end.
Let's go.
So, Miki, when characters progress, do you try to tie it into the actual storylines, or do you just go, level up, congrats, and suddenly they have new powers, weapons, joined a school of magic out of nowhere? I would say, in answering the previous question, one of the previous questions is, putting it within a progression point within the story makes it feel more natural, without a doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
They're expecting that, because that's how things go.
I mean, I guess it depends on the advancement system. Like, I don't think it would be terribly out of scope for, like, Savage Worlds to give an advance while you guys are out on the road somewhere, because the power curve is flat enough that, I went up from a D8 to a D10 in shooting is not like, oh my god, how did you do that? You didn't know how to do that yesterday. No, I'm just slightly better at shooting because I've been practicing.
Mouse Guard's the same way.
Yeah, exactly. Mouse Guard's the same way. You'll do that. You'll level up within a roll.
Yeah, horizontal is very easy
because
to do
you don't have levels. You literally level up one skill at a time. So it's like, oh, I just failed a scout roll.
I learned a life lesson.
Now my scouting is better. Cool.
Yeah. And so I think that is the change. I think that is the definite thing. I think if you're doing a very heroic game where the achievements are vertical, do it during a progression point. Otherwise,
or at very least try to weave in some sort of story, narrative for it. So like, if your Warlock has some sort of major milestone where they gain, a new really cool class-defining ability or something like that, have their patron contact them or something, If it's a wizard learning a big cool spell or something like that, talk to them about, where they learned it. Is this something they've been researching on their own and they finally had a breakthrough in their research where they're like, oh, I finally, because I did that in your game, where it was like, we leveled up and I learned teleportation circle, and I had this whole discussion with the group. I was like, guys, I've been working on this for a while. I thought I had the mechanics behind it down. I do all sorts of conjuration and stuff like that, but mostly that's yanking elementals out of various, planes of existence and whatnot. I couldn't figure out how to move us from point to point without going in between planes and whatnot. But I saw this magic circle, and it gave me some ideas. And so I've been studying it in my book for the last, 3 months. And I worked out how to do it. I can do it now.
Yep.
What was all that about? We went up a level. I got teleportation circle, guys.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it. Simple as that.
But it was a cool character moment for me.
Yeah, it was. It was fantastic.
I got to throw shade at the other wizard for not knowing crap about teleportation,
Yep. Understanding the theories behind it, but...
like, I don't trust you to teleport us anywhere.
Second guy.
Right.
All right, so the final question from that we have here is, do we need an advancement system in games?
No.
I don't think we do.
No,
The question the answer that I have to that is, does your table need advancement in your game?
That's the better question.
And that's what you need to ask.
That's a better question. Talking to my own players, I've asked them about advancement before, and pretty much all of my players, even you, have kind of answered like, I mean, we're just here for the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't really, care if we go up in huge power levels or not. We can sit at this power level for a long time. Like, I feel like the story is advancing, and we're growing as characters, not as numbers, and that's more important to us.
Yep.
And I went, okay, cool. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm not going to pepper in some advances along the way, but I feel a lot less pressure to, like, shower you guys in power so I can, play into that power fantasy,
Yeah. I find that if advancement is a thing in my games, I have a harder time. And
yes, you do.
I have a much harder time. And so I will say that even just going forward, I am going to do both less games with advancement, or advancement that is very horizontal or very board game-like.
Yeah.
Where everyone sees the advancement together, and it's part of the story.
Yep.
You guys now have achieved control of this. You now have received this item or this new transport method.
3 months pass as you build up your little pirate cove.
Yep.
You all go up a level,
Yep.
and now we're starting a new chapter of the story that you are X power level, not Y power level.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So
easy.
All right. So we are taking a break from this a little bit for next week because we actually had to put off an episode so that we could have some guests.
Yeah.
So the next time we come back to this topic, not next week, but the week after, we actually have 2 authors joining us that are going to be talking with us about how power level changes the game.
Yep.
And changes the story. But next week's topic is something that we're kind of coming back to, sort of. When we had Dr. Jason Cox on, he had brought up 1,000-Year-Old Vampire, which is a single-player game, and he was doing a variant 500-Year-Old Vampire. And I've never played single-player games. I have very little experience in them, except for in discussions with other people. But they are becoming a very popular kind of new indie genre.
Yeah.
And I'm a little excited to go do some research on that.
Right.
So we're going to take you guys on the journey of Sarah and I learning about single-player games. And apparently single-player D&D and single-player Shadowrun?
Oh, boy.
Like, there are some variants out there and some adventures that have been recrafted to single player in these systems. So I'm kind of interested to see where this goes, and hopefully you guys can enjoy the journey with us on this one. So
right on. All right, we'll see you next week, and you can find us on Twitter at @ST_Conclave, on Instagram at @ST_Conclave. Listen to us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on mixlr.com/storyteller-conclave. And join us up on our Discord. Shoot us these great questions. We had tons of great questions tonight, so thank you so much. Feel free to join us up on our Discord. Shoot us any questions you want to hear us answer on the air, or just join the discussion with the other great storytellers that are on there and hash things out with your game or whatnot. You can find that link on our Twitter as well as our website, storytellerconclave.com.
We'd like to thank our Patreon members who help support us every single month, especially our name members, Knox in the Box, Subjet, The Arcane Asylum, Vedran, Hulavu, Sam, Sean, and Sparkle Motion. We appreciate all your support every single month. Our pre-show music is by Arcane Anthems. You can find that at patreon.com/arcaneanthems. And our intro music, Beyond the Warriors by Geefrog. You can find that at geefrog.bandcamp.com or on Google Music. Our outro music, which you're hearing in front right now, is Only Our Footprints in the Sand by Meteor Machine. You can find them at freemusicarchive.org.
And a big shout out, as always, to our families, Vicky and Sean. Thank you so much for
Thank
loving
you.
and supporting us. All of our friends who've sat outside our tables over the years to give us these great stories to share with you. And you, every single one of our listeners. We love you guys so much.
Love you guys.
Good night.
Good night.